What's going on, guys? Today I wanted to bring you a test hand combo and coaching session on Xyz Infernity for 2014 NAWCQ hat format. I had a lot of people reach out and message me and comment asking for a guide on how to play this deck, as it's kind of complicated because there's so many different lines the deck can do, as well as in the right hands this deck is just a monster. It's such a powerful deck if you know what you're doing with it. If you haven't checked out my Xyz Infernity deck profile, I highly suggest checking that out before getting into this video. If I remember, I will try to have that linked in the description or in the comment section, but in the off chance that I do forget, go to my channel, find that video, and check that deck profile out. As I mentioned, some of the changes I would potentially make to the deck, tech choices, and a couple other things, so definitely check that out. Now, the one thing with Infernity is there are technically 1 card, 2 card, 3 card, and so on and so forth combos. The reason I'm saying this is more of a coaching session is because we're going to do some test hands, and I want to talk about what I think about every time I see a hand, what things I try to pay attention to, and then kind of play out the combo. The other thing I don't like is this deck has so many moving parts that even if I give you just a 2-card hand or a 3-card hand, when you go and start a game, you have 5 cards. You draw for turn whether you go first or second in this format. So you have multiple other cards in hand, and if you are so focused on just 1 or 2 cards that you need for a combo, a lot of newer players will get lost in that and not know how to manage their hand, manage a field, and their resources depending on what you have. Because for this deck, for example, if you open multiple monsters, you need to know which ones to do first. Or if you think your opponent has a hand trap, you have to think which plays to make to play around those hand traps and different things. So before we get started, I just want to point out, I'll pretend for this video that we're always going first, and we'll also say that the opponent has no hand traps, just so I can talk about my thought process. I'll probably mention what to do in some cases if they do have a hand trap or something, but I just want to let you guys know to keep that in mind, because there's a lot of times your opponent will have a hand trap, or there are times where you'll open one of the pieces you want for a combo, so you need to know what to do, or what order to search cards in, or the end boards, for example. So once I shuffle up and we get the first hand, I'll kind of walk you through it, and hopefully if it's a good playable hand, we'll play it out. I'll show you kind of some of the things. And yeah, so almost done shuffling here, and we will get right into it. As I mentioned, this is a format pre-Duelist Alliance, so we still do draw for turn. So you will have 6 cards, which in some ways is a disadvantage for this deck. Sometimes it's an advantage. So starting off, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then again, draw for turn, 6. So the first thing I like to do when I draw my hand is look at the amount of monsters for this. So we opened 4. A lot of people, if they're new to the deck, might crack under the pressure of seeing 4 monsters and think, oh, this is going to be unplayable. The next thing I want to look at is, are any of these free special summons or cards that get cards out of hand? So obviously, looking at it, there's no instant fusions, there's no Dinotherium, there's no Tin Goldfish, or some of the other cards like Photon Thrasher, for example, that are free special summons. So that's the first thing. Next thing, do any of these discard or get a card into grave, such as Dark Grepher or Armageddon Knight? So here, yes, we have Dark Grepher. That's a good sign. After that, do we have a good discard? Any of these are good discards. They're darks, so you can get them out of hand. After that, how many are 4s? Multiple 4s, and in terms of spells, we have Soul Charge. There are times where opening some of the traps could be good too, because usually when you search the traps, your opponent is aware of where they are and what they are, so they can play around them in some ways. But here we have a really strong, solid hand. So starting off with this, obviously the best play in my opinion would be to start with Dark Grepher, just because we have to get these monsters out of hand. Now here, which one are we going to get rid of? You have 3 options. So here specifically, I think the best one to get out of hand is the Street Patrol for the discard. The reason I would get rid of Street Patrol is because this one can banish and get another one out of your hand. So that's really good. So we'll use the effect, discard Street Patrol. Now what to send? Obviously, like I said, we could send another Street Patrol to get both out of hand. Technically, by banishing this, we could summon the Archfiend and make a Lavalval Chain, which can send another thing and get it out of hand. There's a lot of different options with this hand specifically. So, a cool thing you can do with this, simply because you open Soul Charge and another spell, if you don't care about keeping the MST, you can actually go here and send a Summoner Monk. Reason being, you'll have the option to Soul Charge back, discard a spell, summon another thing, and keep going. So that's one play. Obviously, so let's go from here. What next? Do you want to fire Soul Charge right away? Or would you rather use this effect and get a summon out of hand? So for me, in this specific hand, I would Soul Charge here, summoning both of these back. Now, why did I do that? I did that because with the Summoner Monk, what I'm going to do is discard the MST and summon the second Dark Grepher. Dark Grepher is a soft once per turn, so because I have another copy now, I'm able to discard another card and send another card. So what I'm going to do is discard the Archfiend here. There's a reason I'm keeping the Necromancer in hand, and that's because we'll be able to summon this from hand and keep doing some plays. So here, we're going to then send. Here we have a couple options, because we have a free special once this hits grave. Here, just because we have the chance to get some other things. If you think your opponent has something like DD Crow, if they didn't Crow the Soul Charge, you could send another Archfiend if you still think they're holding the Crow for once the Archfiend actually hit grave. If not, like I said, we're going to play these out as if they don't have anything. You could send another Street Patrol, because currently there's not one in grave. Then here, we're going to overlay. It doesn't really matter here which ones you overlay, so we'll use the Stygian and the Grepher. And here, we are going to go for Lavalval Chain. After that, we'll detach to send a card. Here, specifically detaching the Street Patrol to have it in play. And here you have a handful of things you could do. Since you already have 2 Street Patrol, depending on how you want to combo off with this, you could go and send, say, let me see if it's here. You could send another Archfiend. You could send a Necromancer. Despite already having one here, there is a time where having the second, but I personally think I'm going to go and search the other one as the combo progresses. Again, it's really player preference on what you want to do. In this exact situation, I think I would want to send, let me see here. So it would be between Necromancer, Archfiend, or the third Stygian. Sometimes having the third Stygian too early isn't good because it kind of takes away some of your follow-up, but seeing as to we already have so many summons that will come and a Necromancer, it means we will be able to recycle these, which is really nice. So here, I think the play that I want to go for is going to be sending It doesn't really matter. I guess we'll just randomize this and send one and go from there. So here, we'll send the third Street Patrol. So now what? You have the chance to overlay these, or you can start using Street Patrol to clear your hand. Here, I want to clear my hand, so what I'm going to do is banish a Street Patrol. I'll put it off to the side here, and special summon the Necromancer. After that, because we have no cards in hand now, we can use Necromancer's effect to special back that Infernity Archfiend that's in graveyard. And Archfiend's effect will trigger, again, no cards in hand, to search your deck. Here, you could search a trap, or you could search another monster, because we do have Street Patrols live, or you could even, search your launcher or anything like that. If you choose to search a trap, a lot of times I prefer searching Infernity Break over Infernity Barrier first. And the reason I say that is, one, if your opponent was really, really holding out on a hand trap, this one is the best one because it doesn't require you to have an attack position Infernity the way Barrier does. So, especially if you aren't sure if your combo is going to end on it, I'll explain that if we get to it. Searching Break is probably the best if you are going to search a trap, at least for the first time. With this hand, you have a couple options. Like I said, you could search this. Looking at this hand, though, I would probably search either a Break, or you could search a Archfiend, because Archfiend can search Archfiend, as it says, while you have no cards in your hand, you draw this card, you reveal its special, but when this card is special summoned, if you control no cards in your hand, you can add one Infernity card from your deck to your hand. So search one of these two. In this case, I think I'll search Break just so we can go over a basic line rather than confusing you guys right off the bat. There is more complex things depending on what your opponent has, as I mentioned, or how you really want to play it, but we'll search Break. So what next? You have a variety of 4s and a 3. So here I would take probably my Archfiend and Summoner Monk. It could be Archfiend and Grepher, it doesn't really matter. And here I would go into Lavalval Chain, a second copy. Here, detach and send the Archfiend to send one. And here we're going to send Archfiend Hyris, which here it adds a Archfiend card. So you have the option of searching Palabyrinth, or you could search Infernity Archfiend, which is what I'm going to do here specifically because I already have a Street Patrol in graveyard. So we'll add the Archfiend. Next, we'll use the second Street Patrol, banish it, and summon Archfiend. From here, what I'm going to do is go into deck. And again, you have some options. You could go for Launcher to keep extending your plays. Or a good route you could also go is going for the Necromancer. Or at this point, if you want, you could search another Break or your Barrier if you want to end on that. But you'll be able to get multiple searches. So here, if I'm thinking a little bit ahead of what I want to go for, I guess I'll go for Necromancer. We'll be able to get another summon coming up, so that's why I went for the Necromancer, just to get all my cards into rotation. Here, overlay, and here's where some of the funnier plays come through. What we're going to do is overlay those two for a copy of Diamond Direwolf. We'll use Direwolf, detaching Archfiend, to pop one of our chains and itself. So this will go to grave and this will go to grave. This is just to clear up your monster zones. Because now what you do, you still have the Necromancer in hand, and we still have a Street Patrol in grave. So we can banish the last Street Patrol and summon the Necromancer. Now, Necromancer hasn't used its effect, this one, So we can summon back that Archfiend. And from here, Archfiend's effect will trigger. And we're out of Stygian's Engrave. So here, you have a couple options. You could search for a break or barrier. Here, I'm going to search for launcher for a specific reason that you'll see soon. And now what we have is we can overlay these two for our copy of Leviair. Make sure to activate this, by the way. Just keep cards out of your hand as much as you can. We're going to detach the Necromancer to bring back one of your street patrols. So now you have an additional body on board. From here, you have a couple options again. You could overlay these and go for, say, Abyss Dweller. If you don't know what your opponent's on, sometimes going for Dweller like this is fine, because Break is still live, because like I said, you don't need an attack position Infernity, and you have Launcher to send off, which can summon you Archfiends, which, since you'll have two trying to activate, you'll only get one activation, but you can then search a barrier, so you'll have this plus barrier, so this will stop things like Mermail, or decks that play hands and things. Or, if you want to instead keep going, since you do have the launcher, what you can do here is overlay these two, as such, and you could go for Diamond Dire and do the same thing, pop your cards and summon back to get more searches, which can feel a little redundant, but it actually is an okay play there. So let's just go with that, actually. We'll see how this plays out. Again, some of these hands are a bit confusing, and it's really up to player preference what you want to do. So here, we will detach the Stygian, because we should already have another Archfiend Engrave, which we do. And we'll pop itself, and we'll pop the Leviair, specifically because it has the Necromancer under it. From here, we can use Launcher, and I would go for Necromancer and a second Necromancer, because we have two Archfiends Engrave. From here, we can use Necromancer to summon back our Archfiend. Archfiend's effect will trigger, and here you have the option of Break, Barrier, or Archfiend as your monsters. So here, off of this, we already have a Break. If you're unsure of where you're going to end off, I think one of the best things you can do is search another Break. So let's search another Break. And I don't have a counter with me, but I have a quarter here. So we'll put it on the one that activated the effect. Next, we can use the second one, because like I said, we happen to have that second Archfiend Engrave. So again, summon back Archfiend. Here we get an additional search again. So what do you want to search here? Here you have a couple options. Since it's looking like the play is going to end soon, what you can do is either add the barrier here, so you'll end on double Break plus barrier, or if you want to go for, say, a Dweller play, what you can do is search the third Break. Let me find it here. So you'll have 3 breaks. Then from there, this one has used the effect now as well. So you could, overlay these. Or, again, if you don't want to search the break, and say you search the barrier, you will be, in this case, ending on an Archfiend in attack position. So, in this case, again, it's really up to you. Let's say we search the barrier here, okay? So we'll overlay these for the second copy of Leviair. If you saw in my profile, I'm considering dropping the second Leviair for a third chain. Sometimes I like the 2 Leviair, 2 chain. It's really up to your deck profile and what you prefer to play. So keep that in mind. But in this specific case, we do have the other one. So here we can detach, summon back another street patrol. And from here, we could say, move these out of the way, overlay these for a copy of Dweller, as I mentioned before. So here you have double break, barrier, Dweller, and you have the Archfiend in attack position, so the barrier is live. Or if you don't want to end on Dweller, say it's game 3 or 2 or whatever, and you know what your opponent's on, you could, if Dweller's not the right pick, you could go for something like Key Beetle and detach. It doesn't really matter in this specific case. We'll just detach the Street Patrol so we don't get hit with something like Crow later on if they draw into it. And we can target the barrier so they're unable to just blind MST the barrier. They would have to have something like Spiritualism or something. And again, even in this board where you might be in the case of getting Exciton, you have the out to Exciton. And if you're scared and wanting to hold this regardless, you can break their stuff before they get into Exciton. Obviously, if they have Dark Hole, they're going to try to Dark Hole you, which in case you can use the barrier and negate that and then keep them off of 4s. So that's just one option. Again, there's so many different things. You still have 2 Street Patrols in Graveyard, and you still technically have the option of top decking a Infernity Archfiend in this case. Now, obviously, with that play, you don't have as much follow-up unless you draw into something nice, but usually the traps alone are good enough to keep your board safe, and at bare minimum, you do still have the Lavalval Chain as a follow-up for the following turn, and same with Levier, so they literally have to clear your whole board, or you have some form of follow-up. Again, there were other plays you could have made. I don't exactly remember where we ended off on this. I believe pre-making this was banished, and we had the other Necromancer on field, I believe. I think it was this before anything else. Or no, it was before even this. So if we had this board, had we not searched this and instead searched something like an Archfiend, because we also had the other Street Patrol, we could have done something where we would, say, overlay these into some form of Xyz, and then we could banish the Street Patrol, summon, you could then, search this if you wanted to. You have this could be any Xyz, as I mentioned, let's just say it was a Dweller or something. Then you could overlay these for that second one, detach here, summon this back, and make another Xyz. So here you could go for something like Karen Gorgon. So let's say maybe instead of even this, you would have searched the third break. It really comes down to what your mindset is at when you're going over these combos. And that's why I say a lot of times, though, break is better. This will probably be the only combo I go over just because it kind of showed off everything I needed to say with the deck, whether that be searching break or which Xyz to go into, what to look for in your hands when you start. But overall, it's a really, really cool deck. It's a little complicated. Hopefully I didn't talk too fast and you could follow through with some of that. It was a lot to say, so I know I might have, skimmed over things. I'll go over another hand real quick. I won't combo through it, but just to show you, for example, what some of the hands will look like. So here we should be nice and shuffled up. Hopefully I didn't accidentally shuffle any Xyz here, and oh, I did multiple. Here we have this. So again, it might not look like the strongest hand in some cases, but the first thing you do, look at the monsters, see if there's any extenders or anything, how many Infernities, is there ways to dump cards into Graveyard, which there is. So even with a hand like this that looks close to unplayable, what you can do is summon Armageddon Knight. Oh, there's a few Xyz in there, my bad. Let me just make sure there's no others. Okay. Dump the Stygian. Here, you would banish the Stygian. Special Archfiend, you have no effect because you have cards in hand. But the point is, it's an extender, so you would activate this, set these 2 cards, overlay, go into a copy of Lavalval Chain, detach the Archfiend, and send a copy of... Here you could send a handful of things. Given we are going to summon Necromancer because we sent Stygian off of Armageddon Knight, what I would probably do is send probably another copy of Archfiend or another copy of Necromancer. Let me find where it's at. Necromancer. You already have the Archfiend that'll be engraved and this. The Stygian is going to leave for this exact case, so I would actually probably send another Stygian here, simply because we'll be able to banish this, special this, these are set on the field, use this effect, summon this back. This can then go and search for really anything, but there's so many different plays, and it really just, you gotta pick up the deck, look at the hands, and just play around with it and see what works, what ends on what, because as you saw, depending on what else is in the hand will really affect the rest of your plays. But anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any other questions, make sure to comment those in the comments section. You know, drop like, share this video. Hopefully it wasn't super complicated again. But anyways, I will see you in the next video.